X-Men.
When we meet Forge, Tony Stark is not making weapons for the government anymore, and they hire Forge. This is where the dire Wraiths enter the picture. What are the dire Wraiths, you might ask?
They're like shape stealers.
The dire Wraiths are shape-shifting aliens who were created as villains for a comic that Marvel was doing with Hasbro for Rom the Space Knight, who was a toy.
And in reading the issues independent of Rom, because you can't read the Rom issues anywhere, the scale of the threat, I think, is diminished.
The dire Wraiths become a really big, major threat in the Marvel universe, but you can't read the comic that explains what the fuck they are. So you're just kind of like, what is going on? What's a dire Wraith? Val, the bitch, Val Cooper, and Henry Peter Gyrick are really worried about the dire Wraiths because the dire Wraiths are killing and replacing people within the government in order to take over Earth. The only person who can stop them is Rom the Space Knight, who has a device called a neutralizer that takes away superhuman powers. And if he uses it on a dire Wraith, they lose the ability to shapeshift. Rom is like, I'm not going to give you my Galadorian technology or whatever. So Val is like, well, then we need to make a knockoff.
Yeah, she goes around problems.
So she's like, well, I found this mutant who can invent anything with his brain. What if we tell him about the neutralizer and say, come up with one? So Forge is like, well, all right. And he does, in fact, create a neutralizer that's pretty much as good as Rom's.
He hasn't tested it yet.
And he makes Val and Gyrick promise that they won't use it on anything until he's able to better test it. And when, to be honest, this is on Forge a little bit. Because if you're creating Black Ops technology for the US government, you probably should not be surprised when they use it for purposes that you did not intend. And he does it a lot. And then every time he's like, oh my God, I never thought it would be used for this purpose. And it's like, babe,